Much like watching A&M football, making these videos has become increasingly hard to do. As hard as it is to watch A&M go out there and slog through 4 quarters of offensive turmoil, mistakes, lackluster defensive play, is that safe to say? I feel the same way making these videos because, let's be honest, the Ags haven't given us too much to talk about. That's fun to talk about, at least. There's a lot of bad to talk about, but we've covered all that. We've talked about all that. I've even brought up some highlights. I've talked about how Jimbo, maybe should be given another shake, should be given the benefit of the doubt. I made a whole video on that. So we've covered the ultimate highs. We've talked about what we're observing in the ultimate lows. So let's just call it how it is right now. Last week of the season, LSU looming, turmoil all year. Texas A&M is in their Super Bowl week right now. And I'm not the first to suggest this. Everyone, or many people who cover the sport, LSU side of things, Texas A&M side of things, will acknowledge that this game, despite where Texas A&M has been put by themselves this year in terms of positioning in the landscape of college football, this game means a lot. There's a lot riding on this A&M versus LSU game on both sides of the ball. And if any of you Aggies are going to be there or any of you LSU Tigers are going to be there, I think you're in for a treat. And I'm hoping the game gives us some entertainment, but I know the atmosphere absolutely will be top of the line. So why is this game so important? Well, obviously, LSU has a very clear path, although a tough path, but a clear path to the college football playoff. That would entail beating Georgia in Atlanta, but we're not there yet. They have to beat A&M first. And for Texas A&M, a team that's 4-7, a team that hasn't looked good pretty much at all this year in any kind of meaningful stretch, this game actually does mean something for them, for us, for the Aggies, for the program, for Jimbo. So you have a lot of things riding on it. First of all, you're trying to salvage a recruiting class. I mean, there's going to be visitors at this game, and it's going to be a classic Kyle Field environment. I'm sorry, Casey Smith. That environment last week is not indicative of the fan base's feelings towards Texas A&M. I don't know if you saw, but Casey Smith tweeted that A&M, the stadium, Kyle Field versus UMass, it's so empty, it's indicative of where the fan base is and where the program is. And obviously the program is not where we want it to be. But I mean, I know us Aggies. I know we're not going to not show up to Kyle Field for A&M versus LSU or A&M versus Florida the week before for that matter, or the home game before for that matter. The game versus UMass, Kyle Field being empty that game is not indicative of how us Aggies feel about our team, even in the worst disappointment of a year. But the environment is going to be absolutely crazy, and you're going to have many recruiting visits coming this weekend. And I don't have the list. Go check out TexAgs for the recruiting list. But there are a lot of unofficials and officials this weekend, and A&M has a chance to show out in front of them. Give Kyle Field reason to be Kyle Field. It's no joke. I mean, you can't deny that Kyle Field was more quiet versus Florida. It was a little bit more tame, and it was a noon kickoff. But versus LSU at night, there's a chance this place is absolutely rocking. I know I'll be there. Will you? So recruiting's on the line. And not only Texas A&M recruiting, LSU recruiting. LSU is on this pedestal right now. Year one coach, Brian Kelly, all the defensive accolades, how great their defense is. And LSU recruits well regardless. They don't need a good season to recruit at least okay. And now they're having a good season under a new coach, showing that this new era is one to be a part of. Now, what A&M can do, even though I believe LSU has entirely locked up the West, A&M can knock them down a peg, and then LSU goes and loses to Georgia. I'm feeling a lot better about, what would that be, 9-3, 9-4, 8-4? Whatever the record would be, I feel better about it than if they go into the playoff at 11-2 or whatever it would be. Numbers are escaping me. But you know what I mean. They're an immediate recruiting rival right next door. It's them, Texas, Oklahoma, those are kind of the most immediate recruiting rivals that rival Texas A&M on any given year. And obviously Ohio State, Alabama, they're always there. But I'm talking geographically and power-wise, those are like the perfect storm of what you would consider a recruiting rival. So knock them down a peg if you're able to somehow win this game. But how does A&M win this game? I've highlighted recruiting. What else does the game mean? It'd mean a lot to the players, who I consider my friends, on Texas A&M. It's no secret that there's an exodus looming, at least if you ask any of the national talking heads. I think there's an exodus looming for most programs that recruit at a high level. I've covered this, I've talked about this before. But what would a big game in a big environment as the last taste of A&M football in the mouths of these young freshmen or young players who have not yet burned their transfer, what would that mean to them going into the offseason? Because obviously there's no bowl season. You don't get that extra 2, 3, 4 weeks of communication, at least on the practice field. You don't get to hammer it home for another month. So this is your last impression. This A&M versus LSU game, you're not only recruiting the recruits, you're recruiting your own team at this point, because that's just the era we live in. How are you going to send them off? Are you going to send them off on a high note in front of a rocking Kyle Field, one of the biggest recruiting tools that Texas A&M has in their arsenal? Or are you going to send them off with a half-empty fan base by the time the fourth quarters come into an end, with a half-empty stadium? Are they going to lay down and, continue the mistakes and not scoring and slogging it up on offense and then getting gashed on the ground on defense? What is the impression you're going to leave in the young players' mouths? So basically, I'm just highlighting how important this game is. And I'm sure you've all thought about it. I'm just articulating it for you. But there must be a lot of players at least on the fence of transferring or not. It could go a long way. But I mentioned a second ago, we're talking about the benefits of winning or the repercussions of losing. But what does a good Texas A&M win or game look like? And maybe some of this stuff can be accomplished in a loss where Texas A&M is competitive. I'm sure us as fans would be at least somewhat relieved to see that, considering how this season has gone, considering how the last 2 wins even have not been very satisfying. Yes, we're happy to beat a ranked Arkansas, but that UMass game, who's feeling good about that? So even in a loss, maybe you can accomplish some of this. But what does a win look like? Or what does a competitive game look like for Texas A&M? Well, for starters, you have to have A-Chain and Evan Stewart, I think. I don't think you really give yourself a chance on offense at all if those guys are out. And it sounds like they're going to play, according to Jimbo. He says he's very, very optimistic. Whatever the word was, he definitely used the word very twice in a row in describing it. So I am very, very hopeful that he's telling the truth. So if you get those 2 guys back, that's a big benefit. Obviously. Here's one thing I don't see just miraculously changing, and that's offensive line play. Just rewatched UMass, and they were getting beat like on 60% of the snaps, it seems like. I didn't write it down, but it felt like over half the snaps there were one or multiple either whiffs or just weak plays by the offensive line. And when I say weak plays, they don't hold their blocks for very long and doesn't give the running back much of a chance. They're still very poor at getting to that second level, getting onto the linebackers. And UMass had a really, really small defensive front. I don't know if that, maybe there are some disadvantages there. They're too quick, but it just seems like the tackles were getting beat outside all the time. Whiffs, just blow-bys where you're not picking up the blitzer. I don't see that totally getting eliminated in 1 week, just like I didn't see that getting eliminated at all throughout the season. I thought maybe we'd see some marginal improvement. We really haven't even seen too much of that. But A-Chain just needs a slice. And Wegman has shown that he just needs a second at times. It'd be nice to get him protection, because when he has protection, he's obviously better. But you're going to have to find plays outside of the offense. And by that, I mean what's the word? Just off-script plays. quarterback scrambles, A-chain breaking a miraculous run, kind of like how he did early in that Florida game where he cut back. The whole O-line seemed like it got beat, and he cut back, went for like an 80-yard run or whatever it was. Early Florida game. I don't know if y'all remember. I'm sure you do. But we're going to have to see some just off-the-cuff plays by this offense. Just think about how Kellen played against Clemson or Kellen played against LSU in the 7 overtime game, where it just seemed like whenever he was chunking that ball up, it was getting into the range of the receivers, and the receivers were making plays, where the team was just playing with all the heart in the world, making every single play in the world, because we sure as hell have no reason to believe that this offense is going to be fixed for this game. There's no reason to believe it. We're 11 games in. Why would the 12th be different? So I think we can safely chunk that out the window. Now, what we might get is a little bit of Jimbo versus Alabama action where he just goes motion like every play and pulls out plays we haven't seen before, and just, I don't know what it is to that. I don't know what there is about that, but it just seems like he gets a little extra juice in these rivalry games. Maybe we'll get a little bit of that, but I don't know if that fixes A&M on a down-to-down basis this year. But I'm suggesting, as I mentioned before, you're going to have to get the off-script plays. You're going to have the tackles, the broken tackles, or the quarterback scrambles, or the bounces have to go your way as well. I mean, there's a lot of things that have to go right, but I think A&M has athletes to make that happen in a one-game scenario. And I think Jimbo has shown that he can dial up enough individual plays, maybe not a whole game plan, but enough individual plays in these big games to make things happen. But I'm going to go back to the comparison. I want to see, the Clemson Kellen. I want to see LSU Kellen. Just that game-changing, it just seemed like miracle after miracle kind of plays. But that's what it takes sometimes in games like this when you're overmatched in whatever capacity you might be overmatched in. I don't think A&M's overmatched in talent, but they're probably overmatched in experience, and they're definitely overmatched in coaching and play calling. You're going to have to score the ball because their defense is solid. You're going to have to score off script. That's just how it's going to have to be. I believe A&M's defense can slow them down. I believe you can hold them below 30. Will A&M win if you hold them below 30? Probably not. But you give yourself a chance. You give yourself a chance to go put together your best offensive performance of the year. And guess what? I said this thing won't be miraculously fixed. But there's a good chance A&M has their best offensive performance of the year, if only because the bar is so damn low. Best offensive performance of the year. I mean, let's not count Sam Houston State, and that wasn't even a great offensive performance. That was like 6 big plays and 1 good drive. Was it Alabama? And that was an inconsistent offensive performance. Was it Alabama? Ugh. It's been abysmal. So yeah, the bar is super low. You have your best offensive performance of the year. You put up 24 points, 27 points. Maybe you give yourself a chance. I don't want to defend the game versus UMass because it made me feel worse than maybe even some of the close losses did this year because it was UMass. But say what you will about that game, there were at least 2 drives killed by fumbles. Some drives were just significantly hurt by penalties. I mean, if those things don't happen, maybe you get to 30 versus UMass. You missed 2 field goals. Maybe you could have gotten to 30 versus UMass. What does that even mean? I don't know. I don't even want to know why I'm saying this. I'm not trying to defend it. But if you clean some of that stuff up, you have to. You have to clean up that kind of stuff. You have to play a clean game. You have to perform off script. It's going to have to happen. But they're going to hold them to under 30, I believe. I believe that's on the table. I believe this defense, although not what we would hope they would have been, especially from the signs we saw in the first couple of games, maybe not versus App State, but versus Sam Houston State, although it was a lackluster opponent, I was feeling really good about it. Versus Miami, you feel pretty good. You got a bunch of young guys in there. It just hasn't been what we hoped it would have been based on what maybe at least I thought it looked like it could have been early in the year. But you're still holding teams below their season average on a consistent basis. That has to count for something. The scoring defense is pretty good, although you are getting gashed in the running game. Think about the Ole Miss game, but I don't think LSU will do that. I don't think LSU is going to have that kind of high-powered running game that just destroys A&M, that just controls the time of possession. I don't think that happens versus LSU. I think they're going to score, but I don't think they're just going to, I don't think they're going to put the game out of reach. Maybe out of reach based on what we've done so far this year, but not out of reach based on the realm of possibility that this offensive talent can put up. So with that, I have to give you a score prediction, right? Because that's what we do in these videos. Was that even a breakdown, or was that just me talking as a fan? That was more me talking as a fan, wishful thinking. But I'm going to predict, I want to predict A&M wins the game. If I'm putting my life savings on it, if I'm putting money on it, you got to go LSU 28, Texas A&M 17. We don't get to 20. Maybe we feel a little bit better if we score 17 against LSU, who has a pretty damn good defense. But here's what we really need. We need every Aggie that can make it to that game. We need to pat Kyle Field and show that no matter how down this team is in what I'm calling the short term, one season, this fan base, this 12th man, is there behind the Ags no matter what. So if you're watching this video and you're on the fence, there are some cheap tickets you can find. Go to the game. I promise you it's going to be an amazing atmosphere. LSU fans, if you somehow stumbled onto this video, I used to talk trash to the opposing fan bases in these videos, but I can't really do that without absolutely anything to stand on. So good luck to you. Please go to the game. Go to the game if you can. We're going to piss in their cornflakes, I believe, in some capacity. I think we're going to scare them. I think we're going to make it a game at times. Do we win? I don't think so. I don't think it's impossible. I feel better about this game than I did about Ole Miss. I feel better about it than I did Florida, just because it's the last game of the year. Backs are, as they have been, against the wall. I don't think backs against the wall is even a narrative anymore. It's just like doo-doo. But they could make something special happen at Kyle Field Saturday night, and I'm thinking along the vibes of, like, I keep going back to this game. There was a lot more to play for at the time, but A&M versus Clemson in Jimbo's first year, where there was really no one giving A&M a chance at home, but A&M puts together like this miraculous game, this miraculous performance, and almost wins. I'm hoping for a game like that. Maybe it'll be rainy, just like that game was too. But what's your score prediction, guys? Is this game as important as I'm saying it is, or is there a lot riding on this game like I think it is, or am I overblowing it? Is this thing just, it's all moot anyway, it doesn't even matter? Because I happen to think this is a very important game, obviously for both sides of the ball. So with that, happy Thanksgiving, guys. I'll talk to you after the game. Gig 'em. Let's win. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing. It helps me greatly. And if you're already subscribed, hit that notification bell so you don't miss my next video. Thanks, guys. I'll see you very soon.